All right, now let's get back to chapter 12 of I Survived the Eruption of Mount St. Helens, 1980. Sunday, May the 18th, 8:32 a.m. The blast seemed to shatter the sky. A huge black cloud shot up over the tree line. Jess's legs turned to jelly. That's just a steam explosion, right? Sam asked weakly, but they all knew it wasn't. This angry black cloud looked nothing like the wispy gray plumes they'd seen from Cedar. It boiled wildly and spread out all around until it had painted the entire sky a furious black. There was a loud whoosh that shook the ground. A blast of searing hot wind knocked them off their feet. The air seemed to turn to fire. Jess had never felt such heat before. It was hotter than the diner kitchen on a broiling August day, hotter than Mom's oven when she baked bread. The pyroclastic surge Jess realized the fiery hurricane wind packed with poisonous gas and ash. It was the killer wind that had destroyed St. Pierre. The heat blasted over them, and Jess felt as though she was being cooked from the inside out. Every breath was like inhaling fire. She looked around with desperation, knowing that they wouldn't last more than a few seconds if they stood here. Just a few yards away was a huge hole, one of the grave like pits caused by the earthquake. It was wide and at least 10 feet deep. Almost without thinking, Jess grabbed hold of the twins, gripping their arms with all her might. There! She cried, yanking them towards the huge pit. It was their only hope. They all jumped in. Jess came down hard on her shoulder. She bit her tongue and tasted blood, but she barely noticed. There was only heat, terrible, blistering heat. Get into the dirt, Jess screamed. They all dug frantically into the sides of the hole, trying to tunnel in. Jess tore at the earth until her fingers were bleeding, until she'd created enough space for her head and shoulders. She jammed herself in and then pulled her legs to her chest so she was a little ball pushed into dirt. The air grew hotter until she was sure the entire world had burst into flames. The volcano thundered and roared. Dirt and mud and bits of rock rained down. There was terrible moaning shrieks of trees falling above. Jess thought of her great-grandfather Clive. No wonder he had hated that sound. Jess kept herself pushed into the dirt, but it was very hard to breathe. Finally, the air started to cool down. Jess uncurled her body and stood in the hole, but she had barely taken a breath when a tree came crashing down over the hole. Bam! A branch smacked her in the head. And then there was no more heat, no more pain, just darkness. Chapter 13. 10 minutes later. Jess opened her eyes, but she couldn't see. She brushed the dirt from her eyes and blinked, but there was still only darkness. Was it night? Had she gone blind? Jess sat up, gasping at the searing pain that raked across her back. She had been badly burned, she could tell. It took a moment for her mind to clear, and so slowly she grasped the full horror of what was happening. St. Helens was erupting. The smoke had turned the day black. The pyroclastic surge had exploded over them. Somehow they were still alive in this hole in the ground. Sam? Eddie? A voice rasped from somewhere else. I'm here. Eddie's hurt, Sam said softly. Jess inched over, groping in the darkness until her fingers brushed their faces. She felt tears. Jess fought back her own tears and took a deep breath. She tried to stand, but the fallen tree imprisoned them in the hole. It would be impossible to try to climb out in the dark. They'd have to wait here until the sky lightened. But when would that be? The mountain roared. Every few minutes there was a new explosion that rattled Jess's bones. Jess couldn't control her fear. She finally started to cry. But luckily the mountain drowned out the sound. Jess felt something falling on her head. Warm flakes. Ash, she realized. It began as a few sprinkles, falling lightly like hot snow, and then suddenly they were in an ash blizzard. The warm flakes swirled up Jess's nose and into her mouth. She covered her face, but it did no good. The flakes completely filled the air. The ash tasted disgusting, like dirt mixed with chalk. It clogged up her nose and blocked off her throat. She coughed hard and blew her nose and spit out handfuls. but it was coming down too quickly. She couldn't clear her nose and mouth fast enough. The boys hacked and gagged too. They would all suffocate if this kept up. Then Jess had an idea. "Put your shirt over your face," she cried. Jess reached below her red sweatshirt for her t-shirt. She pulled it over her face. It worked. The shirt became a mask that filtered out the ash. She could breathe again. They sat in the pit with their faces covered for a very long time, waiting for the blizzard to stop. The mountain growled and boomed. Jess huddled close to the boys. She realized that there could only be one thing worse than being in the middle of this horror, being here alone without the twins.